So I served in Twin Falls. I got there in August of 2013, and I left in May of 2015 because of a medical condition. When I served there, it had barely been created. The Boise, Idaho mission had been what was there before, and that had fractured into three. It had become the Napa mission, the Boise mission, and the Twin Falls mission at the time. Twin Falls covered an area, a large area, most of south central Idaho. It went from about Mountain Home area, which is 20 minutes from Boise, to on the west to about Declo or Burley on the east. And then we went all the way to the Montana border on the north, and on the south side we had all the way down to Grouse Creek, Utah, or Jackpot, Nevada, were about our southern boundaries. Most of the people in the Twin Falls mission live in what's called the Magic Valley or the Snake River Valley. And so that's just a strip of land that goes from Mountain Home to Burley that just follows the Snake River. Then there's a big, huge area north of that, which we called the Carry Zone, or because that was one zone of our mission, and it went all the way from Shoshone to Salmon, and it took about 5 hours to cross from the southern border of that zone to the top border. So it was pretty big areas if you were outside the Magic Valley. In fact, my first area, which was in that zone, it took about 50 minutes to drive from one side to the other. And so you definitely had a car in these areas. People, there were about 219,000 people total in our mission. And when I was there, the largest the mission got was about 150 missionaries. And so that's a little bit more than 12,000 people per companionship. So not very many people are in your area. And if you're in one of the further out parts, there were even less. My first area had less than 2,000 people in it. So there was a lot of working with members. Another interesting thing about our mission was it was about 25% of the people were LDS. And so even though your area might only have 3,000, 5,000 people, you still had a good portion of a stake. So, for example, when I served in Gooding, I covered 5 units, and there were only 3,000 people in my area. So very big. There are 18 stakes of the church in the Idaho Twin Falls mission, and if I remember correctly, there's 120-ish wards in that mission. If you served in Twin Falls itself, then you were likely to get a bike area because you were only covering 1 ward or maybe 2, and those were just strips of the city that were a 1/4 mile wide by 3 miles long at most. And so most of the missionaries either elected to walk or ride a bike. We didn't get cars in the city of Twin itself, but everybody else drove a car, and miles were a big problem because everybody's a farmer there. Main exports of that part of Idaho are sugar beets, cattle, and probably potatoes. So everybody farmed, quite literally. Even the people in Twin Falls, even though they weren't farmers per se, they were still doing work to help the farms, like some were bankers for farms. So it was very rural life. So that took some getting used to. Another interesting thing is, since the church is so strong, the anti-Mormon climate in Idaho is also a little bit strong. In Twin Falls, there was this one church that was actually founded by somebody who was an excommunicated member, and the church's main teaching was anti-Mormon, which was made for some pretty interesting contacting stories whenever you ran into some of the members of that congregation. Another interesting thing is Twin Falls has its own temple, and so the members there were super excited about getting the mission and getting the temple, and we saw miracles every day because of that. Everybody knew who the church was, and so tracting in Idaho was useless. I think I went tracting less than 5 times total in my entire mission. Instead, what we did is we often worked with through the members. When we had free time, we would either sort the ward list into a street directory, so that way we could utilize our time better, and then we went out and visited members and asked them who they could invite to meet with the missionaries. And that worked really well. While I was on my mission, I had more than 20 baptisms. I think I had 24 baptisms while I was out there. So missionary work is really strong in Idaho. So a couple interesting historical facts about the church is Twin Falls was actually founded as a response to a Mormon settlement on the other side of the Snake River. And so Twin Falls had started out as an anti-Mormon town. So that was an interesting bit of history, but by the time I got there, it wasn't so much anti-Mormon. People were very accepting of the church by that point. I think one of the apostles, I forget which one, was raised partially in the Twin Falls mission around the Burley area. So that was pretty interesting. Since we were so close to Salt Lake, we often had members of the 70, or once we even had a member of the 12 come and visit our mission while I was there. So that was really nice. Missionary work was the best. We had a great mission president, President Curtis, who he really was able to get the work going and basically reform the mission culture. When I first got there, the attitude was there's nothing to do, but by the time I left, missionary work couldn't be stronger, and missionaries were being obedient and getting baptisms all the time, and so it was wonderful. Other interesting things about Idaho, or Twin Falls in general. Twin Falls is actually the base jumping capital of the United States because it's got the only man-made structure you can actually base jump off of. Every time you go over the Snake River Canyon on the Twin Falls Bridge, you'll see people base jumping off of the bridge. So that was pretty cool to experience. Yeah, Twin Falls was a great place.